Is the world lost? Because when it comes to creativity, is the world lost? Because when it comes, is the world lost? Because when it comes to creativity, is the world lost? Because when it comes, is the world lost? Because when it comes to creativity, is the world lost? Because when it comes, is the world lost? Because when it comes to creativity, is the world lost? Because when it comes,
capture this story. I'm not sure how to say it really, but it's what was the emotional influence behind the track was, right? That TED Talk, because it's talking about introverts and extroverts, and really, if you listen to it, I'll go ahead and link it in the description. It's pretty much breaking down the who's better or what's better, an introvert or an extrovert, and the pros and cons. And she kind of takes it more from a perspective of an introvert, being that she is an introvert. And it really spoke to me. So, yeah, I'll go ahead and link that in the description. But here we have this little, let me mute that or solo that, right? And if we look at the automation on it, it's going up, right? Boom. So instead of making this whole effort of putting so much energy to bring in the groove, this is all I need here. This, fucking half a bar, right? Not even half, like a quarter of a half. So let's actually start this from the risers here.
and I always sensed deep down that this was wrong, and that introverts were pretty excellent just as they were.
Okay, so before we get into these breaks here, the drums here are different. As you can see, it says 178 BPM. That's because this drum loop here will actually work its best at that tempo. That's originally the tempo that I had started with. And if you notice, it's actually a different type of break compared to the 176 break that I have over here. The 178 break is more of a head bopper than a foot shaker. I don't know if that makes sense, but let's go ahead and check this out. Right? It's a little faster. It's not faster because obviously it's 2 BPMs slower than the 178, but what it is there's a little bit more action going on there. There's the drum hits happen a little more frequently, the snares, and there's also a snare under snare roll, like a ghost snare, I guess is what it would be called there. So we can hear these two, right? And that kind of gives it a little more energy when you need it, compared to the 178. It's just your standard, right? Okay. So that was the point of this. This is the groove. I would still technically consider this a part of the breakdown ambient section of a track, but because it does have a bass line and it does have a little bit more kick to it, I have to consider it pretty much its own section. So towards the end of that, again, also we have these leads here, and the little jazzy kind of plucks. I don't know why, it just reminds me of jazz. I don't know. It's probably not even jazzy enough. You could probably talk some shit to me on that right there. But again, I start reintroducing these elements from the intro. So I'm pretty much treating this as a second intro, but it's not, right? It's a groove. So we have a lot of the earlier elements reintroducing themselves in maybe a minimal or different form, such as cut frequencies, a different volume, maybe a little bit more reverb, some ping pong, some chorus. Any of these things can really change if if you want to reuse elements. So let's go ahead and take a listen to the introduction into the break. So we're going to get into this whole section that's pretty much just a break, a second build up, if you want to call it that. Okay, so you can see all the processing and automation that went into these this break here. And I took a standard break. It doesn't, you don't really need to do a lot on these sections. I mean, yeah, that does look like a lot, right? But I used to struggle. One of the main struggles that I had when I first started writing drum and bass, and it's funny because I've always wanted to write drum and bass, but I didn't start there because I could never get it to the point I wanted it to. But what I would do is I would just drag and drop a break and call it a day. And that does get really boring, and I think that a lot of people who know of drum and bass and don't really enjoy it is because it can just be really repetitive. And that's something that I don't really want to I don't want to be lazy about it on those sections. If I can change a break and make something a little more interesting and make it, spice it up a bit more, I'm definitely going to do it. Right, so the section of here is just to be a little crazy. Just have fun with it. I know some people just love these amen breaks that are just they just play like that, the whole 6-7 minute duration of the track, and that's probably enough. You could probably just take the bass line here. Well, there's already is a bass line here, so let's see. Let's loop this with the bass line and see how that sounds. That bass line's probably moving a little too fast for it. But at the end of these breaks here, there's this little 2-bar or half a bar. Let me see, I'm not too sure. Yeah, it's 2 bars section here where it gets quiet. Remember, I said introducing that, quietness into a track will help your drop hit significantly harder, especially after coming out of something like this. Right, and then if you pay attention to my master here, there's a little bit of automation. We have this little harp here melody, and it sounds like it's ducking. You can't really tell, right? Like you want to say like it's ducking, or there's a filter on there and it's kind of pushing back, but there isn't. What's happening is that I'm actually automating the volume on the master channel to give that quiet effect. So it drops from 0 dBs, right, unity, all the way down to negative 13 decibels, and then it shoots right back up to 0 when that drop hits. So let's go ahead and listen to that one more time with the drop. Okay, so this is pretty much the end, right? We have a second groove and a second drop here. This is pretty much, this section here is pretty much the outro of the song. I know that's kind of long. Well, I guess maybe not the second groove, but from this point on, we have the outro. But let's talk about this second drop here, because I didn't do too much of a difference. What I did was, for the second drop, you want to bring the most energy that you have. So I reused all the elements from the first drop. If you remember on the first drop, this drum girl wasn't there, right? So when it would hit, it was just hit. From the bat, that energy, you just bring that energy. It's your last drop. You might as well use whatever tools you can to bring that energy all the way back in, right? I save it for the second drop, and because I don't. My thought process behind it is I don't want people to just listen to the first 2 minutes of a track, and I know right now there's a huge debate that songs are getting shorter and the arrangements are cutting back because people just want the good part. They don't want any of this fat in between, right? But really, if you're, I think, coming from a point of music appreciation or appreciating music for what it is understanding the entire dynamic. The reason why this works, these drops work, is because it has this contrast of quietness, or again, I'm not sure if I'm using the right word there, but it has this contrast to play off of. And when you can execute that contrast, it doesn't matter really if it's a 7-minute track or a 2-minute roller. What's going to matter is, that part is going to lose its authenticity or its excitement when there's really nothing to play off of, right? So that's just my thought process. If you have a thought process of your own on the way this works, let me know. Send me some links or some information on this, and I'll definitely read into it. But personally, I feel like you know what, I'm not, if somebody doesn't want to listen to a 7-minute song just because it's 7 minutes, then they're not my target audience. These are not the people I want listening to my music anyways. So I don't make too big of a fuss about it. Some people can't sit through it. They just want the meat. That's fine, let them go and look for that somewhere else. But here, you kind of have to really define yourself or the sounds that you're creating for the listeners, And again, with these little breaks here, it goes into that contrast, because if it were to be, 32 bars of just the straight break, 176 BPM break, without this short break here, technically this is what a real break is, right? It's going to get boring really fast. And you might as well, at that point, just cut it down to 4 minutes or 3 minutes. And this drops a little longer as well, the second drop, right? Again, that's all intentional. I wanted to change it up a little bit more, and I actually end into the second groove on a, these are 1-bar breaks. This is a 2-bar break, so.
Does the world lost? Because when it comes to creativity, does the world lost? Because when it comes, does the world lost? Because when it comes to creativity, does the world lost? Because when it comes, does the world lost? Because when it comes to creativity, does the world lost? Because when it comes, does the world lost? Because when it comes to creativity, does the world lost? Because when it comes.
Right, so here towards the end of this section here, that's really what I was aiming for. That's it. It's pretty much an outro at this point. And the second groove is really my favorite section of this track. So, well, I hope you enjoyed the video. This is my track, and it never really fades. I'm going to be doing a breakdown on the inspiration that went into creating this track. I did mention it a little bit before in the beginning of the video.